Heya! Today, let's talk about 5 underrated tips for RPG Maker beginners. But some of them are invaluable to seasoned veterans too. Tip number 1. Don't go plugin crazy at the start. Now, okay, if you've spent any time on my channel, then you know I love plugins. They're everything to me. They're everything to my game. I love finding cool new plugins and learning how to use them and even creating my own. However, not everything you do for a game is done using plugins. It just isn't. RPG Maker by default has a number of built-in systems that do all sorts of things for your game. You have the database where you can set up anything from items to weapons to your game's characters. You have the event editor with 3 pages of event commands that can be used in any number of interesting combinations to make interesting events. There's even the built-in map editor. Never mind, I hate the map editor. But the point is, games are made up of so many things beyond whatever feature such and such cool plugin can offer you. And when you're just starting out with RPG Maker, it's better to do what you can within the engine before downloading a truckload of plugins. Now, I'm not saying try to create a plugin's features using events. That's a headache and a half, and oftentimes like a big waste of time. But there are things you can do. Make NPCs, make treasure, prototype a quest using switches and variables. Learn how to use the base engine before you start looking for plugins. Otherwise, you might end up on the hunt for some magical non-existent plugin that you need for your project, only to find out the feature you wanted was already possible in the base engine all along. Tip number 2. Have a debug map. Now, what do I mean by a debug map? A debug map is basically a special room or level that's made just for testing purposes, not something intended for players to ever see. Here's my debug map. Just a giant flat map with different squares of ground texture. I've got all sorts of test events here. Treasure boxes with every item in the game, cooking prototypes, tons of experiments, every single skit. Basically, anytime I want to make a new type of event, instead of testing it and going through trial and error with it actually in my proper game, I test it here in the debug map. You can press F9 to activate switches and variables and set the event to what you need, if you need any of those. But it's way safer to test out new ideas here in debug than to accidentally break my game because I was testing over there in my real game. This also prevents you from stumbling into half-finished events during a test play. You can delete your debug map before launching your final game, but have it around while you test. Tip number 3. Give your areas themes. Now, this is particularly a plea to games that use traditional top-down view and exploration. Bonus points if you're some kind of, well, RPG made in RPG Maker. When I say themes, I really mean to make your areas memorable. Picking a theme, gimmick, or visual feature is the easiest way to do that, I think. I'll be honest, I've seen a ton of RPG Maker games fail here. A lot of devs feel limited by the basic RPG Maker assets, so that probably plays a big role here. But using base tiles shouldn't be the end of creativity. Here's what I mean. You start off your game in a town or village. Because this is the beginning of the game and your hero is just a wee farm boy, obviously the village should be a super generic farming village. I mean, tons of JRPGs do that, so that's obviously what to do. But here's the problem. It's been so overdone that starting out in like a really basic village is just boring these days. And like, not to be harsh, but your basic village probably doesn't have the same visual appeal as a basic village in a professional game. Professionals can get away with a lack of creativity because a lot of times they have gorgeous graphics and stuff. You have whatever tile sets you can scrounge up or make yourself. And going further, a lot of these quote-unquote really basic towns and villages made in RPGs in the 80s and 90s and stuff are not just basic. Let's look at Totus, the starting town from Tales of Phantasia. It's a very simple town where our hero grew up that, in true JRPG fashion, gets inevitably destroyed. Totus may seem like a very ordinary town, albeit a really beautiful one, using a gorgeous tile set, but there are a couple of things that make it stand out. First, and less importantly actually, is the bridge and river in the middle of town. I think those give this town this small visual uniqueness that make it a little bit more interesting to the eyes. But the second, and honestly much more important factor in this town's theming, is the training area in the main character's house. Totus is supposed to be the village of an esteemed hero, a sword master who is well known. The town keeps this identity even when the team travels to the future and sees Totus rebuilt as the town of Miguel. That theming of a great hero's town makes this town more memorable. So what can you do to make your areas memorable, especially those early ones where you're trying to keep new players interested? A good shortcut is to pick an interesting theme. Maybe there's a giant flowering tree in the center of town that everyone worships or something, I don't know. Maybe the starting town is a district of a seedy undercity. Maybe it's as simple as, hello, this is Christmas Town. Same with early dungeons. Final Fantasy VII, yes, I'm talking about it again, I can't help it, it's my favorite. But Final Fantasy VII starts out in the middle of a mission in a Mako reactor. The reactor itself is pretty much identical to reactors we see later in the game, but in the wide array of games available at the time, especially JRPGs, those Mako reactors were something fresh and new. Most RPGs were still giving Dungeons and Dragons, but right out of the gate, FF7 was giving memorable. Keep that in mind for your first dungeon. Lots of indie games use a cave or a small forest as the first dungeon, and I am no different. But try to make them interesting. Is that just a cave, or is it a sparkly magic cave? Is that a regular forest, or should it actually be an autumn forest full of falling leaves? Don't forget to flex your creative muscles, especially early in your games. By the way, the focus on early game stuff is because usually, by later in the game, areas do have themes. Think your elemental temples and whatnot. But the early parts of RPGs in particular, especially when they're made by indie devs, have just been falling flat lately. Tip number 4. Ask yourself often, is this fun? This sounds simple, but it's honestly one of the most important design questions that you can ask. It's so easy to get caught up in making things balanced or complex or even different, but at the end of the day, is it fun? Yeah, maybe your 200-hour epic about tax evasion is unique. It's certainly an interesting and even funny hook. But is the game itself fun? Now, fun is subjective. What I find fun, you may find totally lame, and vice versa. But if you're putting all this effort into making a freaking video game, you at least want it to be fun for your target audience. Playtest, let others playtest, design with a player-focused mindset, and not just what's fun for you as the dev to create, and make a really fun game. And on a related note, tip number 5, play games, and not just RPG Maker games. There must be a reason you wanted to make a game. Games are their very own unique form of media. They've developed their own norms, defined genres, and even quirks that you don't see in other forms of media. The interactivity of video games are the most interesting part about them and what distinguish video games from books or movies. However, I've seen more and more indie game devs who don't play games. Actually, there are 2 types of devs that I've noticed who don't play games. The first one is kind of insane. There's someone who has never played games, or maybe only really been into one game, and now, for whatever reason, has decided to make their own. Maybe they just think they have a good story for a game form, or maybe they tried to tell their story in a different form of media, but they really wanted something visual, and, it takes less money to become an indie game dev than, say, an indie filmmaker. But a game dev who doesn't play games is like a writer who doesn't read. They're going to fall into common pitfalls that they could have avoided by being more acquainted with the form of media they're trying to create. If you are this type, stop, drop everything, go play some video games. Your game will thank you for it. Now, the second type is actually a lot more common. I run into this type all the time. I almost became this type. This is the dev who loved games, who played the heck out of games, who was such a gamer that they wanted to make their own. And then they got so caught up in making games that they stopped making time to play games anymore. And this one is dangerous, because when you stop playing games, you end up getting locked into this tunnel vision about your project. But when you do play games, you get reminded about what you love in a game. I mean, for myself, there was a time when I didn't have cooking at all in my game, because the most recent memories I'd had of crafting systems were RPG Maker games, and they were incredibly dull, and I just didn't want to do that. But then I replayed Tales of Xillia and remembered just how much I loved learning all those recipes. So I added cooking. And now it's one of my favorite parts of my game. Even games outside of your typical genre can be a help to your game. I was playing my beloved Money Puzzle Exchanger one day, and the next time I was drawing for my game, I found the influence of the exaggerated poses and expressions in my own art. Playing games reminds you what's possible in games, and what's fun in games. So yeah, play games, enjoy them, learn from them. Remember what you love about them, and then put that love into the game you're making. I hope you liked these tips. The plugin one is pretty common, but I saw someone use my videos to justify going straight into plugins immediately after downloading the engine, so I had to send out a little "stop, no, that's not what I meant." The other ones are advice I personally don't see enough, though. Let me know what you thought of this video. Should I make other list-style videos like this in the future? A lot of times I find that I have things to say that honestly don't deserve a whole video on their own. So if you guys are into this, let me know. Okay, what else? YouTube! Press the YouTube buttons. It helps with the algorithm or something? I actually don't know. How does YouTube algorithm work? Leave a comment below. Actually don't. I don't care. You know what it does do? It makes me super happy. I actually look back on past videos pretty often and see how many people have watched them and how many likes they have and stuff like that. And when a video is like really liked, it just makes me so happy. Okay, sorry, that was gross. Enough sappiness. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, and I hope you have a great upcoming week. And I'll see you next time. Bye! Are they gone? Okay, so this is the secret part of the video that probably everybody has clicked off of except for me and you, the real friend. The one sticking around until the bitter end. And I have a question. I've been able to activate channel memberships on this channel for a while now, and I haven't because I guess I'm like not sure what kind of awesome cool bonus stuff you guys would even want. Something like early access to videos is really lame, to be honest. I definitely want it to be something special, made especially for you guys. But what? Like, custom tutorials? I don't know. If you're here for this secret part of the video, let me know what kind of thing you'd want as a channel member, if you're into that. Okay, thanks. I'm actually gonna go this time. Okay, bye!